psychologists. They are the best qualified to tell you what kind of hair loss you have and what can be done to address it. Sort of like undermine people's understanding of themselves and healthy, worthy, attractive. American culture does not like aging people. We don't treat older people very well. We don't treat sick people very well. Right? We use it as a cultural shorthand for that. It can be really, really difficult for people to go outside and have other people see them.
That is another for a year and is out now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. The question is, so we have combined people.
Now. That thing came out, didn't it? Came out. Over here.
What'd you find out?
They have plenty left.
Huh,
So I head down there pretty soon. We'll be in good shape. Like there was any.
Hey, Kelly, you there yet?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, once again, I don't know where it's going on, but my email address has gone back to Earthlink for your notifications that you sent out today. So just if you, I don't know why, because I know that you switched it to the Gmail account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it came to Earthlink, so.
All right, let me find out. I'll find out through my IT tomorrow and see what's going on there.
Yeah,
Poor
okay.
Kelly.
Hi. Hi
Poor
again.
Yeah.
Poor Kelly in the emails.
Yeah.
I know, it's a problem.
So it went back. Really? That is so odd because we have your Gmail account in the system.
I know.
Need
So
anything else?
something with Zoom or something like that? Do you have a separate, like, do you have a list that's already there or something like that? Maybe that's why.
Well, our
Yeah.
IT department does that. They put everybody's email addresses into the neighborhood. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I will check on that, Ray, and see what's happening there. Wow.
Okay. All right. I was
Wow.
just lucky to see it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Bill, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gosh, I hope we get some more people here soon.
So Kelly, I have another question. Hate to do this. Do we have an agenda for tonight?
Yeah, it's on the website,
Okay.
on our city website. Do you know how to get to that?
Yeah, I know how to get there.
It's
I
been
didn't
a long
realize.
time.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of forgotten.
Maybe while I'm waiting, I'll go there and pick it up. All right. I'll be back.
Okay.
Okay.
the case involves carjacking and murder of 45-year-old GMC Suburban while dropping from his parents' house. Jordan testified that his then 19-year-old son who committed the murder. Found the judge always claimed he was innocent. Documentary in 2018 raised questions about
Did you find it, Ray? Oh, there comes another one. Oh, Gwen. If you go to the city website and then go to those little round deals, and the second one says meetings, it's orange.
Yeah.
Okay, and then go to the calendar and then go to today, the 18th, and then the community forum is in the green. Do you see that? Click on that. And then it'll say agenda, HTML, or PDF. Click on the PDF.
Oh, God, it doesn't have the plate in it. I'm not sure we should be using this right now.
Well, sweetie, it rotates perfectly well on that little triangle.
Okay, does everybody have the agenda? I could send it. You want me to send it out?
I have it.
Okay. Well, I guess it's 6:05. Shall we go ahead and get started? All right, I'll take roll call, and I'm just gonna roll call from the neighborhoods. Captain John Mullen. Farview's Patty Canyon.
Ray Aiden's here.
Franklin to the Fort. You want me to send it out? Grant Crick.
I have it.
Well, we used to have him. Wonder what happened to him. Bert, are you there?
I can't unmute. It's not allowing me to unmute.
I can hear you.
Huh.
All right, I'll take roll call. And I'm just gonna roll call from Heart of Missoula neighborhood. Captain Lewis and Clark.
Ray Aiden's here.
Are you Lewis and Clark, Ray? Laura Rattlesnake.
Robert Schultz here.
Miller Creek.
Jack Walton here.
Moose Can Gully.
Carol Garlington here.
I can't unmute. It's not allowing me to unmute.
North side, west side.
Huh.
Riverfront. River Road. Rose Park. Lewis and Clark. South 39th.
Ray Aiden's here.
Are you Lewis and Clark, right? Carol, are you doing South 39th? Laura Rattlesnake?
Sure, I'll do them
Robert
both.
Schultz here.
Okay. Southgate Triangle. University District
Jack Walton here.
and Upper Rattlesnake.
Here. Bill.
Can't unmute. It's not allowing me to unmute.
North side, west side,
Huh.
Riverfront. Something's going on there. Do you guys hear that background noise?
Yeah, there's an echo.
Yeah.
With a big delay.
Carol, are you doing South 39th?
Sure, I'll do them
Oh,
both.
that's irritating.
I think it may
Bert.
be through Bert. I don't know what's
Bert.
going on there. Yeah,
And Upper Rattlesnake.
maybe mute him and see what happens.
Bill.
That's better.
I don't know what's going on there, Bert. Okay. All right. Well, let's see here. We have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, we do not have a quorum. So we can't approve the minutes for May 27th or September 23rd. So we'll go ahead with our present. Oh, is there any public comment from the public? No, we don't have any public. So we're going to go ahead and do the presentation on the West Broadway plan with Annette. And I'm not going to try to say her last name because I could never get it right. So I'll let you do that, Annette. So
Sure, sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Annette Marcia. So I am a project manager with the Missoula Redevelopment Agency. And I'm going to give you a brief presentation tonight on a master plan that we have recently completed for the West Broadway area. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And Kelly, can you allow me to share screen here?
yes. Okay.
Okay. I'll try to keep this to about 15 minutes and then we can have time for questions after. So the Missoula Redevelopment Agency teamed up with the Downtown Business Improvement District to do a master plan for the West Broadway area, which is, oh gosh. This is the area, it's bounded by North California Street, West Broadway Street, North Russell Street, and the river. It's about a 15-acre parcel of land. The funding for the project was provided through the Missoula Redevelopment Agency and a grant from the Big Sky Trust Fund that the Business Improvement District applied for the grant through the Missoula Economic Partnership and it from the Big Sky Trust Fund. So a multi-agency cooperative effort on this master plan. We put together, to get this started, put together a pretty comprehensive steering committee of business and property owners, city administration. So the mayor sat on our steering committee, 3 city council members from the north side, west side neighborhood, that area. And then representatives from city departments, Department of Public Works and the Planning and Development Department. Our consultants, our urban planning consultants, Dover, Cole and Partners, they did the master plan for the downtown master plan, also a master plan for the North Riverside Parks and Trails. So they're very familiar with Missoula. And we were really comfortable working with them. The Business Improvement District, the Missoula Economic Partnership, MRA, Montana Department of Transportation, because West Broadway is an MDT street. And then Gretchen Hooker was a representative of the North Side, West Side Neighborhood Council. We also put together, that was our steering committee, and they met to kind of guide the whole process as we were getting a little deeper into gathering information and then bouncing ideas. We had a whole group of stakeholder groups. Again, a much broader group of business and property owners, both within the site and then adjacent to the study site. We reached out to developers in the community, representatives from educational and social services providers, lending institutions who would be working directly with developers, housing advocates, neighborhood residents, people who live in or near the area. And then our technical experts, drawing a lot from the city or adjacent agencies that we work with quite a bit for parks, environmental issues, because we're right on the river, transportation, we're right on West Broadway Street, and making sure that we've got good bus and bicycle access, and public safety representatives in the community. Just quickly going through the process, this planning process started back, our first steering committee meeting was back in March. We kicked off the planning process in April with a 5-day virtual design charrette. So we had hoped that Dover Cole could come and lead this in-depth information gathering and initial planning process in person, but COVID just has not allowed that. So it was a virtual process. Dover Cole has been very good. They've really dialed it in on how to do these processes virtually. But we were able to get in 3 in-person gatherings. One was at the Poverello Center, so speaking with folks who are residents or guests at the Poverello Center. We had an in-person session at Western Cider, and then a number of neighbors who were not, this was back in April, not comfortable being inside. We gathered out in downtown Lions Park, which is right across the street from California Street, or from the cidery. And during these sessions, we gave people questionnaires, imaging, and I'll go through a little bit more of that material just in a few more slides in the presentation of how we went about gathering the information. We put together 2 websites for the project. Dover Cole, the consultants, designed a website specific to the project, envisionwestbroadway.com. That hosts most of the information for the master plan, and that's where you could go to get a full copy of the plan. And then we also used Missoula's Engage Missoula website to host we put up a neighborhood survey, and that's just a really good resource to get a quick glance of sort of how the process is, how it's moving through the process, and just a second layer of information. We also put, as the initial draft and then the final draft of the plans came out, we put hard copies at the Missoula Public Library, at Lowell School, and at the North Missoula Community Development Corporation, being mindful that not everybody has easy access to a computer, and so wanted to make this plan as accessible as possible, especially since we've been limited on our in-person gatherings. Use social media and direct email to try to get information out as much as possible. Set up an informational booth at the North Side, West Side block party. And then we had a pretty intense public input session in October to talk about the initial draft of the plan. And then the consultants took that information, fine-tuned the plan, and came out with a final draft of the plan. And we had another public input session on November 9th to get feedback on that. We also worked with a group that is known as CREW. They're in the North Side, West Side neighborhood. They work out of the North Missoula Community Development Corporation and doing community organizing and community advocacy. And we worked with them. They were really, really encouraging us to get as much neighborhood input as possible. And so we worked with them to put together a survey specific to this master planning effort. And excuse me, they went door to door and distributed that survey. And we'll talk a little bit more about the information that we got from that. And then as we were going through the process, we continually encouraged people to contact anybody that they were comfortable contacting from the planning team. So me or someone from Dover Cole or Linda at the Business Improvement District, whoever they were comfortable contacting. So this is just a visual of the timeline. We kicked it off in late February, early March, and we've gone through this process, and we're now here. We've got a final plan. It's a draft, it's still in draft format, and we're taking it through the formal approvals process, and we hope to have the plan adopted by the City Council on December 13th and have it finalized to provide a copy to the Big Sky Trust Fund by the end of December. So this plan will become an amendment to the Downtown Master Plan, and the Downtown Master Plan is an amendment to the Missoula Growth Policy. So we need to go through a formal adoption process, and it will then live in the record in that way. We've personally talked to over 340 people through our kickoff meetings, our stakeholder meetings, technical groups, workshops, whatnot. One of the first, so way back in April when we started the process, one of the first things that the urban designers do is ask people participating in the process to write down one word that comes to their mind about the area that they're studying, and then put it into a program that creates a word cloud. And this is what the words that come up the most often become the biggest words in this word cloud. And so back in April, the words that people were thinking about this site, potential, forgotten, rundown, kind of sketchy, affordable, abandoned, discombobulated. So I think it was encouraging that the biggest word here is potential, that people see that there's a lot of it. There's certainly a lot of work that needs to be done, but people were definitely seeing potential. As we went through the process, and when we issued an online survey, when we were presenting the final draft of the master plan in early November, did the same exercise. And these are the words that really floated up, having gone through the planning process. So looking for community and looking for this area to be a gateway to maintain affordability in the area, really taking a look at the river, reimagining it, vibrant, bustling. So really engaging and proactive words that are really encouraging for the type of vision for this plan. Another planning exercise that the consultants go through is choosing these community image surveys. So what respondents, what are some of the images that they could see or similar in the plan for this area. And so took a lot of that information to help design the plan. And then at the end of, so a lot of this occurred, that intense week-long virtual charrette in April. And at the end of that charrette, the consultants had already put together some renderings and some images of what the vision might be, and started to think about some big ideas that had come out of the public input process, and how that could inform and further refine the design ideas. And then did a polling, so showed these images, and then did a polling of the people who were participating in April. And very encouraging that a good 60 to 70% of the respondents said that they felt like the designers were on the right track, and certainly wanted to see more information, but felt like they were on the right track. So based on in April, the question based on what you heard tonight, do you think that we're on the right track? And about 80% of the folks said yes, or probably yes. And then the same question asked at the end of the October presentation, and again, about 80% of the respondents said yes or probably yes. So continually going through the process, trying to make sure that we're on the right track and that we're listening to the public input and trying to be really responsive to that in the way that the plan gets put together. So public engagement, the virtual charrette, the website, and then we have this ongoing where people could go to the website, and you can still do this, go to the website and type in comments or respond to comments that like questionnaires that are on the website, or type in comments that you are not necessarily on a questionnaire, but you can provide your input. we had about 2,500 unique visitors to the website, which we thought was pretty robust for an area that is not community-wide, but certainly has community-wide impact, but it's a pretty discrete sized area. And then the neighborhood survey that we worked on with the CREW group, the neighborhood advocacy group in the North Side, West Side neighborhood, they felt that there are a number of people in that neighborhood who are either don't have easy access to computers or are just working 2 or 3 jobs to keep going, and so wanted to distribute a survey to folks that may not typically be involved in the planning process. And so we worked with them to put this survey together, and then they went out and knocked on doors and distributed the survey in person. And we got about 66 respondents back, and very encouraged by the information, and a lot of really good information. I would say a good maybe 70% of the people who responded to this survey had not participated in the planning process. And the survey went out in early October, or it was probably middle of October. And I would say about 70% of those people who responded had not participated in the planning process to this point. And then we asked the question, could you see yourself, if this area did develop the way that it was shown in the master plan, could you see yourself living in this area or near this area? And at least 80% response rate said yes. So we feel that this master plan has been vetted, publicly vetted, and we feel pretty comfortable that it's on the right track. Of course, all master plans are just that. They're just master plans. They're a good vision and a good template, but you can't dictate exactly what's going to happen. But we think that the vision is about right for this area, and really evolved through a good neighborhood and public input process. So just a reminder of the area that we're looking at. It's about a 15-acre parcel. So the reason why this master plan now and why this location, this area was included in the downtown master plan update. But it at a really conceptual level. A few things happened since the downtown master plan, and I think it's shown in a couple of slides beyond here. This area is less than a mile from downtown. There's direct trail access. It's near the intersection, 2 really key intersections, the Russell and West Broadway intersection, and the West Broadway, Toole, and North California intersection. It's in an urban renewal district number 2, and it's also in Missoula's 1 opportunity zone. And we'll go through it in more detail, but the city owns, this is the Missoula water site, and the city has purchased a couple of properties on immediately adjacent to Missoula water. And then the city also purchased the Sleepy Inn site as a non-congregate shelter for COVID. And when COVID eventually abates, that property also is currently publicly owned, and the city has some control over how it will be developed. So this is just a reference to the downtown master plan update. This is the site, that we're looking at today, and some of the things in the downtown master plan that were envisioned for this area: new housing opportunities, making sure that the new buildings are street-oriented buildings that face West Broadway, making sure that there are generous sidewalks and street furniture to encourage pedestrian activity. do something about West Broadway to make it more pedestrian friendly and easier for pedestrians to get across, and extend the riverfront trail. So all goals of that were carried forward into this more detailed master plan that we're talking about tonight. So the 5 big ideas, Dover Cole is really good about taking a broad amount of information and synthesizing it down into nice bite-sized pieces that can become tangible elements around which to build a master plan. So the 5 big ideas that came out of the public information gathering process were: 1, to build the next great Missoula neighborhood center. And so this is in the area that we're talking about, and provide a neighborhood center for the North Side, West Side neighborhood, especially. Second big idea, be a good neighbor and respect the businesses that already exist there, and respect local businesses and encourage local businesses to continue to be in that area. Third big idea, connect to the river and to complete the pathway system, the trail system. The 4th big idea, help solve housing and commercial space affordability issues. Housing was, there were, no matter who we talked to, the 2 issues kept coming up. And one was about housing and affordable housing, and housing, that missing middle housing. And the other one was do something about making West Broadway easier for pedestrians to cross. So affordability and housing. And then the 5th idea was an idea that had been initially identified in the downtown master plan and further advanced in this master plan. And that is recognizing that this area is located to be a gateway area into the urban center of Missoula, especially if you're coming from the west, say if you're coming from the airport or other areas, if you're coming into town on West Broadway, as you come around the corner and cross Russell Street, it's clear that you're beginning to come into the urban area, the urban core of the community. So I'll quickly go through each of these big ideas and how they manifest into the plan itself. So big idea number 1, build the next great Missoula neighborhood center. So be a complete urban place. So make sure that the buildings are fronting public spaces, fronting streets, a concept that to perhaps be the next, quote, hip strip or hip neighborhood in Missoula. So a focus on maker spaces or incubator spaces or like shared office spaces. Create high quality, welcoming public spaces for everyone. So focusing on open space and green spaces. And also just by urban form of locating the buildings on street facing, making the block sizes comfortable for human occupation. So they're not mega blocks, they're city-sized blocks that we're comfortable with, and create safe, comfortable, interesting streets. So a walkable neighborhood center. So I was talking about creating blocks that, urban blocks that are comfortable for the human scale, and then street fronting, bring the buildings up to the street edge and create this strong street edge that pedestrians are comfortable, put in street trees, generous sidewalks. One of the big moves in this master plan recommendation is a new sort of main street, if you will, for this area that would get installed this is Burns Street, so it would get installed in this area, and it adjacent to a long green that is a public space that could also front small shops along here. And then parking, being mindful of how to carefully integrate the parking into the design so that it's interior to the built form and on-street parking, but not mass parking lots that break down that street edge. So the new Main Street and the public square. So this is a little image of where that is, and I pointed it out on the previous slide as well. So it would sit, the Missoula Water occupies, the building is about in this location, and then the parking or the storage lot, parking lot and storage lot is back here. So this entire area where the new street and the public square is being proposed is all on publicly owned land that's publicly owned today. These are street sections proposed for the existing streets that are out there. So Hillsdale Street, this is as it is today, and proposed to keep within, maybe expand the right of way just a little bit, but put in a lot more amenities. So street trees, on-street parking, generous sidewalks, and then of course, pulling those buildings up to the street edge to create that, that urban fabric. So Hillsdale Street, Cedar Street, similar recommendation for Cedar Street, similar recommendation for North California Street. Big idea number 2, be a good neighbor and respect the local businesses that are currently on site, and also to encourage the new businesses on site that come on site to also be locally owned businesses. So, you know, retain businesses that exist today. This is a master plan that is recommending what can happen in the future. The city certainly has control over the property that the city owns, but this master plan is not intending to dictate how other people design their properties, or when they design or when they develop their properties. That's their up to them. But the recommendations for how that can occur. Become a local destination. So provide amenities for the north side, west side neighborhood. And that's where the survey, the neighborhood survey that we did, it was very valuable to uncover the types of amenities that neighbors in that area felt that would be really beneficial to them. Things like local restaurants and cafes and breweries, places where people can congregate and socialize. Daycare, not surprisingly, was a really sought after use. Personal services like laundromats or hairstyling, some community space. And then there was a lot of interest in incubator space, shared kitchen space, space that could encourage startups, and like a small grocery, corner store type places, and a lot of interest in encouraging the arts and places that studio space that artists could find attractive. And that's not that's pretty compatible with this sort of maker space or this incubator space. So those are kind of the things that were really envisioned for how to get the uses, encourage those certain uses on the site. The plan then lays out some suggestions on how to, you know, certainly support existing businesses, encourage local ownership of new businesses as they come in, assist them, locally owned, and establishing the makerspace. So that the plan goes through some suggestions for how to get to that place. Again, some more detailed strategies through zoning, helping, how to help broaden the ownership, set aside some space for local businesses, specifically for local businesses, and create a local business preference in publicly owned buildings, and different financing mechanisms. The third big idea is to connect to the river and to complete the path system. So this new Main Street, which would connect between West Broadway to the north here, down to the river at the bottom of the page, this new green space and this new Main Street would do that. And increase access to parks and nature. So the city just finished the purchase of the Flynn Lowney Ditch, which runs along the south edge of this site. And it's not clear, the ditch, property owners, the easement for the ditch is to convey water. And if it's not conveying water, then the city may not have access to that property. But certainly in the areas where the city already owns the land, the city has that access. So it's not determined yet what would occur on the property that the Flynn Lowney Ditch currently occupies, but that's certainly an opportunity to expand this access to parks and to nature. And then certainly connect to the river and complete the path system. And then to build sustainably, it's not a mistake or not it's very deliberate, I guess I should say, that the renderings for this master plan include solar panels on all the roofs, green roofs, the intention, and this is aspirational. We don't know if it will get built to this extent, but this is a vision that has been really emphasized in this master plan. So the public parks and public spaces, better utilizing the river. There's probably not direct access to the river from this site, but downtown Lions Park, which is just a block away, the Parks Department is creating designs to get direct access into the river. And the downtown Lions Park also will have a pretty robust playground. So the plan for this master plan area, a small play area, but not a super large playground. The vision for the long green is that it would support cafes and businesses that could spill out onto the walkway, but also be a space where people can just congregate and enjoy being outside. And as well, this is also providing a direct connection between West Broadway Street and the river. And then, as I mentioned previously, there may not, and most likely is not, an opportunity to get direct access down into the river, but there is a lot of opportunity to increase waterfront views and to really do something with the area where the Flynn Lowney Ditch occupies to make that more of a natural and outdoor space that people can be outside and enjoy nature. And I mentioned sustainability. The master plan includes a whole bunch of what's referred to as low impact development. So porous paving, stormwater attenuation, green streets, green roofs, rain harvesting. So a lot of green infrastructure that's looking forward as we're doing future development to sort of build that green infrastructure into the development as it goes in. Certainly took a look at bikeability and planning for bicyclists, closing the gap. There's a gap in the riverfront trail as it goes past just to the east of downtown Lions Park, and really encouraging the city to close that gap. The recommendations for bike facilities on West Broadway, and certainly all new streets within this plan area to make them biker friendly. And trail oriented development, we just often talk about transit oriented development. In this area, we also have trail oriented development. This site is less than a mile from downtown, and that trail along the river is such an easy way to get from this site to downtown. So using that really using that trail location. Sustainable practices, the master plan also, in addition to the low impact development recommendations, there are recommendations for how to incorporate waste facilities or zero waste facilities, so recycling and those sorts of things. How to reduce energy consumption, solar panels, and green building. Big idea number 4, this housing, and especially affordable housing, was an issue that came up again and again and again through the planning process. New neighborhoods or healthy neighborhoods, I guess I should say, not just new neighborhoods, but healthy neighborhoods in an urban planning, in an urban setting. Healthy neighborhoods have a mix of incomes and a mix of demographics. And so the recommendation for this area is to have a mix of housing types, but certainly to definitely include affordable housing in that mix, and housing that is affordable permanently. So the master plan focuses and really recognizes that the cost of housing in Missoula has grown exponentially in the last 10 years or so, and that there's a real need for more housing at all price points, but especially at that affordable, lower income level, and certainly in that missing middle level. The plan lays out strategies for how to achieve affordable housing through zoning and planning, ways to streamline project approvals, perhaps taking a look at different types of impact fees, different ways to finance and fund projects, low income housing tax credits, utilizing TIF, the Housing Trust Fund, New Markets tax credits, and transit-oriented development. And then just some more strategies for how to achieve this housing target. So affordable housing was a really, really important issue as we were going through this planning process. And the recommendation in this plan is that there would be between 50 and 70 permanently affordable housing units created in this new neighborhood center. And of those, about a third would be for households that are earning up to about 30% of AMI. About a third of them would be for households between the 30 and 80% of AMI. And about a third of those would be for households that are between 80% and 120% AMI. And the target is that those 50 to 70 units would be permanently affordable units. And then big idea number 5 is this sort of gateway area, create a unique entry experience to urban Missoula. So in this rendering, this shows, this is currently the Sleepy Inn site. And so what's envisioned is some sort of a signature building that signals if you're coming in from the west and you cross Russell Street, that you just immediately get the perception and the sense that, aha, I'm entering someplace different and someplace more urban. And so signature building, but also unique landscaping and maybe some public art and outdoor space that signals to people as they're coming through this area that this is a different space from further out west on West Broadway. West Broadway Street, if you really recall from the boundary that we drew for the planning area, it ran along the south side of West Broadway. It did not include the street itself, because as this planning effort, as we were envisioning it before we got started, we knew that West Broadway is, so their MDT and the city are going to finish work that is on the boards for the Russell Street project. We know that there's a lot of interest in West Broadway doing something. We thought that that would just suck all of the attention and nobody would have any attention for the site itself. And so we said, let's just not talk about the street. Let's really focus on this area. But everybody we talked to, from bankers to neighbors to business owners to people who use some of the services down here, people who live down here, everybody said, if you don't do something about West Broadway and make it an easier street for people to get across, this won't be successful. So we asked the developer or the urban planners to come up with some ideas, and a couple of the concepts are for a roundabout or a rotary at the West Broadway, North California and Toole Avenue intersection, to make safe pedestrian crossings, well, not quite mid-block crossings, Burns Street and then the new street that gets created here, and some pedestrian refuge. And obviously we need to do a lot more examination, a lot more study to make sure that this works. How does this work with traffic? And of course, NDT is going to be sitting at the table with that. But there are some recommendations, and it's clear to everyone that we need to make West Broadway permeable for pedestrians and for vehicles getting in and out of this site. So this is a little closer up view of that, the new pedestrian crossings, the roundabout at California Street, also recommendation for cycle tracks on West Broadway, and the recommendation to make a concerted effort to have generous sidewalks and street trees and to consolidate curb cuts to the extent possible on West Broadway. And then of course to support transit so that we can just give people more transportation choices. We talked about trail-oriented design and also transit-oriented design, give people a lot of transportation choices. So this is the illustrative plan of the full build out. The building, so this is the old, this is the Sleepy Inn site. This is the Missoula water site in here. And all these buildings pulled up to the street frontage, parking kind of tucked away into the center of the building areas, and a lot of sidewalks and street trees. I'll just quickly talk through how the phasing might work. So these two properties are publicly owned, city owned. properties and likely would develop first. And so perhaps the Sleepy Inn site, and you know, this is all speculation because things move and change. 2 years ago, I think, or a year and a half ago, I think we all hoped that COVID would go away and the Sleepy Inn site would no longer be necessary for non-congregate shelter, and we're just not there yet. Missoula Water will be moving from this site up to the Scott Street property in the next 3 to 5 years, or maybe sooner. We don't know for sure. And when that happens, then this property, the city is in a position to engage developers and develop this property. So perhaps the new street gets constructed, the new long green, we get new buildings constructed in here that are multi-use buildings with housing and commercial and retail and makerspace and the uses that are envisioned. And then longer term, that development continues. Western Cider has expressed interest in really encouraging activities like makerspace and food trucks and other activities that might be sympathetic to their mission, but also to that sort of support the arts, support startups, support entrepreneurs, and small makerspace type things. And then long-term full build out of the site. So pulling it all together, this is the proposed development program put forth in the master plan. Calls for about 20 to 30,000 square feet of leasable space for retail, restaurant, commercial. So that translates to between 8 and 15 shops. 10 to 15,000 square feet of office space. Ideally, this area would be home to between 4 and 8 workplaces. So people might be able to live and work in this area. About 100 to 130 market rate townhomes and apartments. And then on top of that, between 50 and 70 affordable units. And we talked about that previously, about a third of those, 30%, up to 30% AMI, about a third between 30 and 80% AMI, and about a third between 80 and 120% of AMI. Also talk about parking, between 140 and 160 new parking spaces. And that's just using surface parking. There's always the opportunity for parking that gets tucked in under the building. We don't know that underground parking is feasible in this space because it's so close to the river that just hasn't been explored yet. But there's the opportunity to at least integrate 140 to 160 parking spaces on this site with the rest of this design. So transit-oriented density of around 30 units to the acre, and suggesting that a mobility hub should be included somewhere in this area to encourage people and make it more comfortable for people to use transit. And then chapter 5 of the master plan goes into implementation and outlines the steps for how to, suggesting steps for how to develop this property in a way that is consistent with the master plan, and who the lead agencies will be or recommended, and the time frame for these different strategies to occur. And so with that, I'll just wrap up with where we're at, and then open it up for questions. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this master plan, this West Broadway master plan, we're asking that it become an amendment to the downtown master plan. which is an amendment to the Missoula growth policy. So we've given a presentation to the Business Improvement District. They provided funding and they accepted this plan. We gave a presentation to the planning board because the planning board has jurisdiction over the Missoula growth policy. Gave a presentation on Tuesday night, and they approved this plan as an amendment and made a recommendation that City Council do so as well. We've started that process with City Council. We were at the Land Use and Planning Committee yesterday. Made a presentation to the MRA board today. Also, as a funding agency, the MRA board approved this plan and recommended that City Council do so as well. Tonight, this presentation to the Neighborhood Forum. There will be a public hearing at City Council on December 6th. And then we're hoping that City Council will take final action and approve the plan on December 13th. And then we'll get, if there continue to be some comments that they don't substantively change the plan, but they make it a little bit more solid as we're going through this process. So the designers will have a little bit of time to button that up, and then we'll get a final plan by the end of the year. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for questions.
Annette, I have a question.
Sure.
You were talking about the Mountain Water or the Missoula Water building there on Broadway. So everybody will be moving over to the Scott Street, over to the city shops. Is that where they're going to be?
In that area, there will be a new building constructed there, and it will take some of the services. So Mountain Water will move there, and some of the services with the DPW will get consolidated into that space. A new space, it will have outdoor storage space as well as office space up there.
Oh, also the Sleepy Inn Motel property, is there any future plan to do something after the pandemic thing is over, if it's ever over?
Yes. that may, yes, if it's ever over, that may be, knock on wood, if we can get the pandemic under control and no longer have a need for that to be a non-congregate shelter. Yes, there is a vision to construct multi-use building in that area, and some sort of a signature building that is really sort of an iconic building that is sort of a gateway to the urban area.
Okay. All right. Are those the only two properties that the city owns in that block?
They are.
Okay.
But the Mountain Water site is a pretty substantial site.
Oh yeah, yeah, I've been there.
It's quite a bit of real estate.
Well, gosh, thank you, Annette. That was an excellent presentation.
Great.
Very, very enlightening. Yeah,
Great.
for sure.
Great.
Okay, well, you can either stick around or you can, whatever you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Annette. Okay, so next on our agenda is the improvement grant update. And what we did there, the grant committee, they met and they looked over all the questions, and we thought maybe we'd put the grant out earlier, so it's going to be available on the city website about the first week of December. And so we're asking for anybody else that would like to be on the grant committee. So if anybody in your neighborhood would like to be on the grant committee, please email me and I'll get you guys on. So if you want to spread the word to your teams, I would appreciate that. Okay. Let's see, the staff report. Also, the Midtown Association is planning to develop a master plan for the area between South Higgins and 14th Street, generally between Bancroft and Reserve. This would provide greater detailed discussion around planning along Brook Street and help to provide insights on the needs of the neighborhoods on both sides of Brooks. This is an early in the process, and since Midtown Association is still fundraising for consultant services, the hope is to start the project next year. But we wanted to give you a heads up on this because it's going to affect at least 4 neighborhoods. Southgate Triangle, Franklin to the Fort, Rose Park, and Lewis and Clark. I would like to invite Midtown Association to the community forum in a future meeting, and so we can learn a little bit more about that. So that's what we'll be doing with that. But probably, hopefully in January, we'll have some more information. Colin's position is the job duties have been changed and it is now available and it's on the website. The application process will close on the 29th. And after that, we will conduct interviews early in December and hopefully we'll have somebody on board by the first of the year. That's our plan anyway. So we'll see how that goes.
So Kelly,
Okay.
I've got a quick one and I'm sure you don't have know one way or the other, but that
Maybe.
is in the past, there has been at least a few members of community forum or other volunteers who have been part of that interview process. Now, it didn't happen with Colin, I know that, but has there been any thought about that? I don't even know who's planning it. I mean, we all probably got the email from Lavelle that she's looking for questions, but I'm just curious about whether there's been any even thought about there being.
Yes, we have been discussing that actually. I did not know that. I did not know, Ray, that community forum, that some members on the leadership teams have participated in the interview process. And Lavelle and I, we've been bouncing that back and forth. So I will mention that to her tomorrow and let her know that this has been a process in the past, and we'll see if we can't get somebody on board. Are you interested? Are you interested? Okay, Ray's interested. Okay. If there's anyone else, maybe Mike Painter.
About you?
I'll be
Carol,
there.
what about you?
Oh, Carol. Carol, are you interested?
I don't think so.
No?
Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay.
I think Mike Painter might be. I'll
Yeah,
ask Mike and see if he wants to participate.
And it
He's
looks
pretty
like Bert's
well-rounded.
still on. I wonder what he's thinking about too. Yeah.
Yeah. They've been meeting regularly, the Rose Park has. So they're, yeah. He's pretty well-rounded, he's part of the neighborhood, but he's also worked for the city. So we kind of, I'll ask him. I'll ask Mike. Anybody else that that would maybe be interested in that, let me know, please. Oh, did we lose? Oh, we didn't. Did we lose? Oh, no, we lost Gwen. She was our next up. She was our city council liaison. Oh, I hope she comes back. She was next on the. We'll give her a few minutes.
Sure. What do you mean
Yeah.
by neighborhood council report 6.2?
I just gave you that. Oh,
No.
the neighborhood council report. Yep, that's where I would like to have each of you go around and tell me what's going on in your neighborhood. Any things that you're concerned with or what's going on. And I know that a lot of neighborhoods haven't been meeting, so yeah. just kind of like we used to do.
Sure. Do you want me to start?
You know what? Let's, oh,
Or should we wait?
we lost Gwen. I really wanted Gwen to be here so she could hear what you were wanted to
Oh,
say.
yes, of course. All right,
Yeah.
I'll wait.
I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if she had something else going on or I don't know. Well, go ahead, Carol. You can go ahead.
Well, the Moose Can Gully and South 39th Street neighborhoods meet together. And of course, during the pandemic, we haven't been meeting much at all. We met in April, mostly to prepare for the April 24th cleanup day, which in our case was very successful. That was fine. We met again in May in person at Wakapia Park. And at that point, we were just trying to figure out what's possible, what's feasible, in this pandemic environment. And those same concerns came up at our meeting yesterday. We met by Zoom yesterday. And our main concern at the moment is getting an update from City Council, which is why I wish Gwen were here to hear this. An update from City Council on the status of their commitment to a deer study. Now, the deal there is that in 2019, we made a joint application, Moose Can Gully and South 39th, for NPF grant funding for a deer study in urban Missoula. And it was removed from consideration because Mayor Engen and City Council Chair Van Lossberg preferred to fund it in some other way. And then COVID happened, and we haven't heard anything since, and we have no idea who is involved at this point or who's going to take the next steps and who's responsible for doing so. And we'd like to know where it is, what's happening, and what we can do to assist. We want to update the deer study.
Hi, this is Bill Rudiger. Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
I did sort of a study for the city council on our deer situation, and you're probably referring to eventually deer control. Is that right, Carol?
Probably, but it has to start with a data study of what's going on in Missoula. Oh, there's Gwen.
Yeah, I'm a wildlife biologist, and I've worked on these issues a number of times, but I did it for the city, and I worked with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks on this. And anything done will have to go through Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, as you probably know. But the cost of controlling deer is pretty ominous. And probably in the neighborhood of $40,000, $50,000 a year. And I guess it was up to the city. Do they want to spend that kind of money year after year? And some of the controversy that might be evoked by such a control measure. And Fish, Wildlife, and Parks specifically told me and the council that they would prefer that landowners manage their property so they don't attract deer. So that's sort of a summary of kind of where that effort went.
What was the date of that?
Oh, golly, it was several years ago, Carol. I'm going to say 3 or 4. And I made a short report on it. It wasn't anything formal. This was all done as a volunteer.
Okay.
And I contacted several universities and towns that had been involved with different kinds of control measures, from deer to even Canadian geese and other wildlife. And most of them gave up after a while, to be honest with you.
Well, it's a very difficult problem because it creates, there are people on both sides. But the nuisance value is getting greater and greater every year.
Yeah, I understand the problem totally. I'm just telling you, what you actually do by reducing our deer populations in town is you ramp up their reproductive rate, actually. And it's a problem that's ongoing, and unless you do it every single year forever, it really doesn't have a large effect. So I'm just telling you what I found out. I learned a lot by this. I'm not against controlling deer per se. I'm a hunter and I've shot many, many deer, believe me. But when you get involved in urban settings, there's all kinds of complexities. And
Indeed, we're well aware of that. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Helena has done some interesting stuff.
Yes, they have. And at one point we were going to go over there to see them. That trip never happened, but it will be interesting to see how long Helena does that control. To my knowledge, it's sort of just one part of town that does that.
My understanding is that Helena also has mule deer, which is a whole different situation than our white-tailed deer, that they're actually far more dangerous to people. So they've had to take a different approach. Just to throw it out.
I don't
We're a great salad bar.
Too dangerous myself, but you know, you can get in situations, they'll kick dogs, and that particularly when they have fawns, and the bucks will horn people once in a while, but
Or in rutting season.
yeah, right, like right now. And it's something most of us learn to live with, frankly. But I'm just giving you an update of what was found a few years ago.
When we would still be interested in what Mayor Engen and Brian von Lossberg want to do with the application from 2019 and how they want to proceed.
Sure.
Yeah, so my understanding is, and Bill, you can chime in on this, is that that chronic wasting disease is now a factor. And because of that, there is a spotlight again being shown on urban deer because they can congregate. So 2 years ago, Brian and I actually met with wildlife biology people from the university. The first step was to do an urban deer count in Missoula to try and get a sense of where we're at. There have been some prior counts, and it would give us a sense if there's a trajectory, if we're increasing. Anecdotally, it appears to be increasing, but that would have been a great project for them and some of their grad students. And then the pandemic hit, and I think it got put on the shelf, and here we are a year and a half later. So that's what I know. Based on what information we could glean, then we would see, is there something that should be done? If so, what, and what would work in Missoula? But the chronic wasting disease issue changed the conversation, just from deer are a nuisance to we need to see if we can address this. But yeah, it's expensive.
That's all.
Yeah,
we understand why. I mean, it certainly has gone been shelved during.
It's expensive and it's contentious, and so when we get new people on council, we just give it to them. I'm joking. But it's one of those rather unsolvables. So yeah, we like them to, figure out the works with that.
You know, my advice as a biologist with more than 50 years experience now, when you don't really want to do something, you go study it. When you don't want to do something about it, that's a classic way agencies deal with not doing anything. I'll just tell you that.
Yeah.
Searching for clarity. Yep.
And hoping it goes away.
Well, and the pandemic came, so here we are. We're good.
I imagine we'll be talking about this 10 years from now or 20.
You know it.
Well, I've heard that some deer, at least in Wisconsin, have contracted COVID.
Golly,
Not surprised.
let's not go there.
That's a
We can vaccinate them, right? I looked into trying to sterilize them through darts and things like that, and it's really not feasible. I mean, comes down to killing them.
yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything from the neighborhood they want to say or
Well,
discuss?
just that Far Views, we're going to have our leadership team meeting on December 9th. We've got quite a big agenda, but I think one of the ones that has come back for us, rather than deer in particular, it's been a lot about traffic calming. And we're going to get an update from Evan about the drive like your children live here signs that are out. And I don't know the status of those at this point, whether he got the full supply that was ordered. And okay, he did. All right, good. So he'll be able to talk about that. But that's something, I don't know whether any of the rest of you have dealt with that in a similar kind of way, but seemed to be helpful in the neighborhood. So we'll work on that. We know we're supposed to work on the bylaws too. And then we've got parks that we continue to try to push. So that's it for Far Views.
Send me the agenda, Ray.
Under Grant Creek. We received a large neighborhood project grant for traffic signal boxes. We ended up with several new ones when Reserve Street was maintained, and the old ones got pitched in the trash, and we had shiny new stainless steel instead of decorated traffic boxes when the maintenance was done, as in we had now 5 boxes to address. And we were able to rewrap 2 of the boxes, which had been done with vinyl. That got done right away, but the Public Arts Committee was not allowed to meet in public, and they could not figure out a way to have an art call and do it over Zoom to evaluate art. So we still have those 3 signal boxes, which would need to be done from scratch, waiting, and we'll rely on the Public Arts Committee to get that done once they're allowed to meet again, or we'll come up with an alternative that doesn't require a meeting. The other thing that's going on in Grant Creek that's quite important is we have a committee working for the Friends of Grant Creek, and they're evaluating Grant Creek for a community fire plan, a very small focused plan to address what should be done in advance before the next wildfire shows up in Grant Creek. And they've done a lot of work. They're making a lot of headway. They've evaluated evacuation routes, haven't found any particularly good ones other than coming straight down Grant Creek, which is sort of a one-way in, one-way out game. We're awaiting an application from the developer at 2920 Expo Parkway to seek rezoning for at least the north parcel in what had been formerly a gravel quarry. And that north parcel is the larger of 2 parcels the developer owns. The developer has put up 2 3-story apartment buildings on the southern lot, the smaller lot, which is 7 or 8 acres, and has permits for 2 more. So once that application becomes live, which we're told could be within weeks or months, we will meet and try to figure out how best to involve the community and the discussion of what is going to happen with the remainder of the parcel. Rezoning was denied last year, but presumably rezoning will be applied for again here in a matter of weeks or months. We will need to have neighborhood council leadership team elections at that meeting, because we'll all be terming out at the end of this year, with the exception of, I think, one leadership team member. So anyway, that's what's going on in Grant Creek right now anyway.
All right. Thanks, Bert. Jack, Bill, do you have anything to say? Robert?
Yeah, the Lower Rattlesnake sent out a newsletter. We made some significant progress on the train horns at the Madison Street crossing and the Taylor Street crossings. Initially, they had said they'd have wayside horns installed by next spring or early summer. We kind of went to the mayor and tried to get it done earlier, and he implied that he might be able to get it done, but it's looking like that's not going to happen according to Monty's site. It's still scheduled for next spring. But the good news is it is going to get done. The neighborhood, both ours and I forget the neighborhood that's just south of us, mostly businesses, motels, fast food. We should all benefit significantly from that. The newsletter also addressed the fate of Prescott, or formerly Prescott School, now the International School at the foot of Mount Jumbo. But again, I guess the International School is moving out, or already has. I've lost track of where they are in that move. I think COVID messed them up. But after they move out, it seems like the city has no definite plans for the fate of Prescott School. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Quick comment there. If you haven't driven down 3rd Street west of Orange, you will see a fully occupied Missoula International School where that building supply place was, right before you get to the railroad tracks. The school has been out of that building for quite a while. Let's put it that way. So that Prescott School is empty. There's nothing in there from Missoula International School anymore.
Well, thanks, Ray. That's news to me. Last time I checked, I thought they had moved out, but then I heard no, they had put it off. But I guess they put it back on and succeeded. I don't know what's going on with maintenance of Prescott. Somebody, presumably we taxpayers, are still paying to make sure the pipes don't freeze and the roof doesn't leak and things like that.
Well, I think that would be part of MCPS, because that's who MIS was renting from. So they still own that building.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ray.
This is Jack Walton, Miller Creek. We haven't met for a month or two, but the Christian Drive tie through and the roundabout on Lower Miller Creek has been annexed into the city. There's 47 lots there. I don't know if they started construction yet on any of the lots. And then Shaver Drive, Guinevere, they've tied Guinevere through by the gravel pit, and it comes out right across from the county gravel pit on Upper Miller Creek Road. And there's Max Drive was also extended and looped back in, and there's 47 lots there that's been annexed. And then there's also some existing homes on Joy Drive that were part of that same annexation process. And then several of the apartments were still part of the county, and those have been annexed into the city as well. Then up on top of the hill, Upper Miller Creek, between Linda Vista and Jeff Drive. There's like a 1 acre park, but there's also commercial property there. They have a sign up now that talks about Vista View, and there's going to be 8 businesses in there. The first building is right next to the Brookland Park, and there's a market, a small restaurant, and then a daycare center. And the 4th unit right now is currently vacant, and they're looking for someone to occupy that space. And then the other building will be right up towards right away of the Miller Creek road itself. And there's also 4 units planned there, but that's a future development for our area up here. That concludes my report.
All right. Thank you, Jack. Okay. Now we have Gwen Jones, City Council update. Report.
Hi, and I hope my internet doesn't go out. My husband's out at Best Buy right now buying a new router that we've been needing for a long time, but hopefully I'm good for a few minutes here. I was trying to think back on the last few months and just kind of hit the highlights of what council has been up to. Every summer, of course, we do the budget. So once again, we spent a lot of the time this summer on the budget. And the great majority of our budget is typically the increases are made up of the cost of living raises for all of the staff. So that's always a big hurdle to figure out how to get all of that encompassed into the budget for the next year. In terms of changes to the budget, I don't know if you recall, but in the summer of 2020, we tipped up the mobile crisis unit as a component to complement our police department. And this is basically, instead of sending a police officer to the call, if there's enough information so that we can gather that it's a mental health crisis, police are sometimes not necessarily the best response. They periodically have to go to stabilize the scene, but what's really needed are mental health workers. So typically an EMT and a mental health worker will go, and they're able to handle those tough situations. They have some better tools, how to deal with it, how to de-escalate it, and get people to the help that they need. So we tipped that up in the summer of 2020, and we doubled the capacity this summer based on the results that we got from last year, which it went well. It was a good thing to have. It frees up our fire and police so they can go off and do the things that they should be doing. And as you can imagine, with some of these people, there are a lot of repeat calls, frequent flyers who are using this system. So again, much better to have the right personnel addressing it. So I think that was probably the highlight of the budget, was increasing the mobile crisis unit. We also added more capacity in 2 areas. Climate change, we added another FTE to really work on clean energy, which we've got an initiative that we'd like to have clean energy by 2030. So we added more capacity there to have someone really be working on that and implementing it. It's, it's a heavy lift to create the policies, and then it's a much heavier lift to implement them. So we have lots of good policies and we're working on implementation, but that was a focus to work on the implementation. The other thing was we put some more capacity towards communications for the city. And having been a city councilor for 6 years and communicated until I'm blue in the face and still getting questions where people aren't aware of things, I think it's common knowledge the city needs more communications, especially for the city of our size and a local government of our size. So we need a lot more capacity than we put towards it this last summer, but it's a start, and I think that's good. So we'll see how that works out. Then it was election season, and honestly, when we head into a municipal election for the 6 weeks or so leading up to early November, council tends to be a bit slow, and we did have some incumbents who are running again, and everybody's just kind of waiting to see how the election turns out, because it does impact the work that we do, of course. So we had 2 incumbents who ran, Jordan Hess and Stacy Anderson. They were reelected. And then we have 4 new city councilors. Let me see, in Ward 1, we have Jennifer Savage, Ward 3, Dan Carlino, Ward 4, Mike Nugent, and Ward 6, Kristen Jordan. So we'll be seating 4 new people in January. And I think we will have my goal, honestly, is always to have a functioning council, because I see a lot of dysfunctional local government councils where they can't have conversations and make decisions. And I think we're still in the functioning realm, so I'm happy about that. Something that I have been working on since last spring, and that came to fruition this fall, that I think is a big issue, are our homeless facilities. So the Poverello Center, once the pandemic started, CDC handed down guidance, and for places like the Poverello Center that do receive federal funding, they had to change their practices so that people can only sleep 6 feet apart. They had to be socially distanced. That basically cut the POV in half in terms of how many people they could house there. At the same time, as we had a huge impact to our economy, I think we were all expecting it, and the numbers have proven it true, that this pandemic has hit people very hard who are in lower income brackets. And I think as a result, we are seeing increasing homeless numbers. So what to do? We've spent a lot of time figuring out how to provide alternatives. And last year, the Johnson Street Winter Shelter was used. That's a city facility. It eventually, like the Sleepy Inn, it will be redeveloped. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out, what are our options? Are there other buildings available? What can we do? And honestly, did not come up with other options. So we went back to Johnson Street Shelter, and since it is not yet slated to be torn down, we decided to use it for a second year. So we are again using that this year. Poverello is managing that and running it. They've been hiring staff, and we tried to do a lot of outreach. These are difficult entities to run, especially in residential neighborhoods. There are a lot of challenges. So we tried to gather as much information from last year, lessons learned, how can we make it better, and have done quite a few different things. I don't know if you've driven down North Avenue, but there's a big privacy fence up so that people who are staying at the shelter and who are out in that big parking lot by the Sheck, there's a big fence up there now that blocks it off. So there's just some boundaries that are put up in that sense, visual boundaries. We also are using and ARPA money is financing all of this. We also use the ARPA dollars to hire security firms, both to be at the Poverello and other areas, as well as at Johnson Street. And it's not necessarily to be inside the shelter as much as out in the neighborhood. If something is bad and going on in or out of the shelter, the cops will get called. But I think having security that's in the neighborhood is just keeps things the way they should be and less issues. So fingers crossed. I know there will be wrinkles to get through. They'll, as I said, people are homeless for all sorts of different situations and reasons, but part of that population can be very challenging to deal with. So we've tried to put things in, and we had an open house, had a lot of people come, which was good, and are trying to have really open lines of communications with the neighborhood. I would also add, there are other options out there also. Clark Fork Camping is the Clark Fork Street Camping is being set up. I don't think it's open yet. There was a lot of permitting to do through the state. That is out by the Poplar Farm and the wastewater plant. That's for people who want to camp, and it is a sanctioned camping area. And then the TSOS, Temporary Outdoor Shelter, is still going. That's on the floodplain out on the way to Blue Mountain on county land. That's been really successful. A lot of people have gotten a lot of services when they stay there to help them re-enter into a more conventional living situation. Just all sorts of things like they don't have any ID, they don't have a birth certificate, where to start to try and move forward to function in our complicated world again. So those are also out there. And I guess the important thing also I wanted to mention was, if you recall, about, I think a month ago or 3 weeks ago, there were a lot of tents outside the Poverello Center on Cedar Street, I think it was. And ultimately, we did clear those, and it was close to when the Johnson Street shelter was opening and the weather wasn't too cold yet. The questions although I was not campaigning this fall, questions that were trickling back to me as there was a lot of interaction with people who are campaigning was, people are concerned about the homeless population in Missoula. And it's not so much they need to not be here or we need to get rid of them. It's more, do we have a plan? What is the plan? How are we going to address this issue? And I think we do have some good plans in place. What people need to, I think there's a fear of, like Seattle and Portland have had, and San Francisco, huge tent populations, and there's a fear of this happening in Missoula. So what people need to understand is, under the Ninth Circuit Court, a case that came through that involved the city of Boise a few years ago. If people are camping in the public right-of-way, they cannot be cleared unless we have a place for them to go. So that's why it's very important having the Poverello, Johnson Street, Clark Fork camping, all of this. The camping situation that evolved outside of the Poverello was becoming dangerous. And there were some environmental issues that were happening with waste, with needles, things like that. And so the health department got involved, and on that basis, it was cleared. But it was becoming very dangerous. Poverello staff were scared to walk in that area. So we were able to handle that one situation. But in the long run, if we need to have facilities in place, because we're in a difficult time. People are having a lot of economic issues. People who have people who have been in a homeless situation for a long time, it's gotten worse. So we need to have these tools set up. I don't know what will happen next winter. We're just kind of cross these bridges as we get to them, but we were able to queue it up for this winter, and that was good. So if there's any, I'll keep going, and then if you guys have any questions, you can throw them at me. Couple of things that council is currently working on. I'll just briefly touch on. We are looking at utility rates for our water, wastewater, and sewer water utilities. So we had a consultant do analysis for quite a few months to figure out where we should be at in terms of the infrastructure and the maintenance that we want to do on these water systems. And honestly, our sewers, our wastewater system is we have one of the best in all of Montana, but it's at a stage where we need to put some money into it to maintain it. So we are looking at increases. I think it's 3% for a year and then another 3%. It's in that range. They're pretty small increases. And I know this is a topic because of the water acquisition, and there was a lot of discussion. If the city takes over the water company, they're just going to raise rates. That's what's going to happen. So I wanted to address that. The rates that we are currently paying for water are from 2011. They have not been raised since 2011, which that's probably the best deal going these days, because with inflation, that means you're paying less now than you were back in 2011. We are looking at these increases for two reasons. One is the cost of living raises that all of the staff under their labor agreements get, and they are very reasonable. But when you have staff and you have that raise every year, it's a big impact on the budget. So that is one thing. We want to be tracking with that and staying healthy. The second thing is infrastructure. We want to be investing in infrastructure to keep it at a good level so that it doesn't cost too much in the long run. And even with these increases, we are easily in the middle of the pack in terms of Montana cities, in terms of the rates for these utilities. So if you want more information, it's currently still in front of council, but you can track our agenda and pull it up. But that's where we're at. And I would throw out there too that I just, having been on council and having spent a lot of time on the water acquisition, I think the thing that doesn't necessarily always get out to people is the fact that since we've taken over the water company, we've been able to do far more investment in infrastructure than the prior private owner was doing. And secondly, if you recall, this water company was sold from Carlyle Group to Liberty Algonquin, a Canadian firm. And in their literature that they sent out to their shareholders, Liberty Algonquin predicted they would be raising rates every year in order to get more of a bang for their buck for their shareholders. So this is why most utilities are owned by municipalities in terms of water and things like this. And I'm happy to answer more questions, but that's that conversation. The last thing I will bring up is marijuana. So in the 2020 election, marijuana was legalized for recreation in Montana. And that flipped the pancake onto local jurisdictions to figure out how that was going to work in their communities. So we are currently working on regulations and zoning that will go into effect prior to January 1st, which is when this industry opens its doors to customers in Missoula. The issues have been, number one, where will it be manufactured? And we're pretty much looking at industrial zones. Secondly, where the shops will be located. It's interesting. I have read all sorts of different numbers. I've read that based on our population, we should have about 8 recreational marijuana shops. We currently have 57 that are waiting to open their doors to these sales. They are medical marijuana shops, which can also sell recreational starting January 1st. And people have been renting spaces and getting ready to do this. So it is interesting trying to zone for something that you don't really know how it's going to play out. I think at this point, we've tried to figure it out as best we can. And at some point we have to call it and say, we just don't know what we don't know. And we're going to have to see how it pans out. I do think there's a strong consensus that 57 shops is way too many for Missoula. And some of those are going to get sifted out or weeded out, as one could say, because they're just not all economically going to make it. We have way too many. We're saturated. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. For those of you who like our downtown in Missoula, a huge amount of energy for the last 20, 30 years has been spent on creating a vibrant downtown in Missoula. And there has been a lot of concern that it's going to be saturated by recreational marijuana and really change the character. And that's not a good thing. So as a result, we are looking at buffers. The ones that are currently there will be grandfathered in, but if I were a betting person, I would bet that a fair amount of those will go under. And then we are looking at buffers. So if new ones come in, they cannot be too close to one another. In other words, they are spread out so that it doesn't just turn into a nucleus. The other issue is shaded frosted windows. I don't know if you've been downtown and you've noticed some of these pot shops have frosted windows. The state has a law that this transaction has to be private. So the easiest thing to do is they get a can of spray paint and you can frost the window up and there you have it, easy. On the other hand, good urban planning, you want a really active streetscape. You want windows that have wonderful displays and that interact with the street instead of just basically a brick wall you're walking by. So our design excellence program that regulations that we passed a few years ago stipulate that you have to have an active streetscape. You have to have windows that you can see through. And so the result is that will be enforced. They're going to have to change up how these do these, and they can still have a private transaction within the premises. But instead of just looking at a flat glazed window, they need to do something with the window. And, you know, Missoula is a creative town. Get creative. It's my attitude. Figure it out. And I think they will. The last issue on marijuana is energy consumption. Similar to Bitcoin, growing marijuana takes a huge amount of energy. State regulation, it has to be done inside in greenhouses. It can't be outside. And so you got to keep it warm and you need a lot of light. So our city staff is working on how to create good regulation that will say, that's great, you can have a grow operation, but you need to use LED lights, and these you can only use X amount of wattage, and whatever it is, they need to have more meetings with the stakeholders to figure out what's workable. But if you follow the Bitcoin saga in Missoula a few years ago, huge amount of energy that was being used, which is kind of going in the wrong direction of where we want to be going with our energy consumption and clean energy, et cetera. So we don't have clarity yet on that. Staff needs to work on it, but between clean energy options and limiting energy consumption, I think we can say, welcome to Missoula, but you know, we do have these values and you need to figure out how to make it work if you're going to be here. So that's where we're at. We have not finalized either the utility rates or the marijuana regulations. We're in process on those, but you can always submit public comment if you have thoughts on this. And if I can answer any questions tonight, I'm happy to do that.
This is Bill. What's going to happen with the tax money?
So good question. In the 2021 election, the city people in Missoula voted that there would be a 3% local option sales tax only on recreational marijuana. First of all, I think the first question is, how much is that? What is it going to translate to? And I've heard, oh, it'll be about 500,000 total, and then we split it with the county, or maybe it's more. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see what comes in, first of all. There could be some initial issues in terms of law enforcement. We might have to have another downtown police officer that we hire and fund with that, because under federal law, I don't quite understand this, but under federal law, it's not legal. So therefore, these shops cannot use banks. So it's all on a cash basis, which means you have more robberies. So here we are, but we're going to figure it out. So we might have to put a little bit into law enforcement. I think after that, the appetite is affordable housing trust fund and property tax rebates. You know, if it's such a tiny amount in terms of property tax reimbursement, I think I would rather see it go to something like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, where it's going to have more impact. At this point, I would describe those parameters to the discussion, but those decisions have not yet been made, and we will see. So you guys have thoughts, let us know.
I suggest maybe it go to addiction services. That's something we really lack in Missoula, both alcohol and other things. I mean, for a town as quote sophisticated as we say we are, it's not here.
I think that's another great idea. And I think once we have a sense of how much revenue we'll have, that will help focus that conversation more too.
Because that's the root of a lot of our issues in crime and other things in Missoula, is the whole addiction thing. All over the world, probably. Anyway, that's enough.
No, I agree. And historically, local government has not really addressed mental health or addiction. That has been more of a state, somewhat of a county, but really more of a state responsibility. But we're not seeing a lot of that these days. So as we kind of accumulate more and more responsibility at the local level, since we are the backstop, that could be a good conversation to have. So we'll see. And we'll be swearing in a new council come January 1st. So
Yeah.
we're off to the races.
All right. Okay, does anyone have any other questions for Gwen? No?
Well, I'm glad that you guys are still meeting, and I look forward to some point in the future when it's back in chambers and there's a lot more people.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
No. Thank you, Gwen, for your update. I appreciate you coming tonight. And, I know it's 2 hours, 2 hours long.
One other thing I can throw out there is I sit about once a week, I sit on a conference call that involves a lot of the local leaders and the health officer. And the update from today was, as of this week, the 7-day average on new COVID cases in Missoula is 29 out of 100,000. That's the first time it's been under 30 in about 2+ months. So this is good. Delta is a really difficult variant that we're dealing with, but this is good. The concern is finally, as it's coming down, now we're heading into Thanksgiving and then the holidays in December where everybody travels and passes it around and we're all in closed rooms seeing people. So be careful and mask and use common sense. I think this winter is unclear what's going to happen, but that was good. And we're just re-upped on FEMA funding up until April 1st, and that helps fund the Sleepy Inn and a lot of the testing and the vaccination. And so that's a very good thing. But we're still in this pandemic. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Anything else from anybody else? No? Thank you, Gwen, for coming here. I appreciate it.
Good seeing you.
Oh, you too. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. I'm going to head out. I got to prep for something tomorrow. Okay.
Okay. All right.
I
Bye-bye.
am too. I have a conflicting agendas here. So thank you.
Okay. Let's adjourn this meeting.
All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. All right, you guys. We'll talk to you again. Bye.